The alarms on the human warship Valor screamed through every metal corridor. As Captain Rylan Hale stood on the command deck, red lights flashed over his face, and the floor trembled as another shock wave slammed into the ship's hull. Outside the viewport, a dark ocean of stars flickered behind a terrifying sight, an alien fleet spreading across space. Like a storm of steel and fire, 1,000 ships, maybe more, all turning their weapons toward the lone human vessel that refused to run. Rylan did not blink. He knew running would only delay the inevitable. The alien armada had been hunting humanity for years. Today, they had found what they thought was an easy target, and he planned to prove them wrong. A violent tremor shook the deck as the first barrage struck. Sparks burst from a console and drifted like dying fireflies. Rylan gripped the railing to stay upright. His crew shouted status updates: shields failing, engines overheating, weapon banks charging slower than expected. Every word should have filled him with fear, but instead he felt a cold, sharp focus. He had been in worse battles before, but never one this hopeless. That did not matter. A single human warship could still make chaos if the captain was stubborn enough. "Captain, they're forming attack lines," his tactical officer said, voice shaking. "They plan to sweep us apart." "Good," Rylan answered quietly. "Let them come. They expect us to crumble. We're going to disappoint them." The alien vanguard moved like a massive metal wall, glowing with weapons ready to tear the Valor into pieces. Rylan watched them gather speed. He could almost imagine their commanders laughing inside their strange, insect-like bodies. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to break easily. But the Valor had a secret. It carried a prototype reactor and weapons system that the enemy had never seen. A weapon not yet tested in a real war. A weapon powerful enough to erase entire squads of ships if the crew survived using it. Rylan raised his hand. "Prepare the storm cannon." The words alone made the crew fall silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The storm cannon drew so much power that the ship itself suffered during firing. Too much heat, too much shock, too much strain. If something went wrong, the Valor could tear itself apart before the aliens fired a single shot. But if it worked, the enemy fleet would feel fear for the first time. That as the charging sequence began, the bridge lights dimmed. Deep inside the ship, the reactor roared like a caged sun. The deck vibrated under the sudden tidal wave of energy. Screens flickered. Metal groaned. Crew members held their breath while the cannon built power far beyond safe limits. The alien ships opened fire first. A hail of plasma cut through the darkness, smashing into the Valor's weakening shields. The ship spun slightly from the impact. Consoles flashed warnings. Hull temperature rising. Shield integrity dropping. Rylan stared straight ahead, refusing to yield. "Hold steady," he said softly. Just a few more seconds. The moment felt endless, just the small human ship shaking under a storm of enemy fire, trying to survive long enough to strike back. Finally, the weapon officer shouted. Storm cannon charged. Rylan gave the order with no hesitation. "Fire." The cannon unleashed a beam of swirling blue-white energy that looked like a lightning storm straight head into a single stream. It cut across the void, tearing through the vanguard ships. For a moment, space lit up brighter than any star. Alien vessels exploded one after another, ripped open by the unstable energy. 10 ships gone, 30, then 50. The entire front line broke apart like shattered glass. The alien fleet pulled back in shock. Thousands of hostile eyes watched from their ships. They had never seen a human weapon do that. They had never believed a single human warship could destroy so much so fast. For the first time, they hesitated. The Valor drifted in the aftermath, its hull scorched and shaking, but still alive. Inside, the crew stared at the destruction, stunned by their own survival. Rylan felt a short, sharp breath leave his chest. For a moment he allowed himself to feel pride. Then the moment passed. Because the alien fleet was regrouping, more ships moved forward. This time more cautious, more alert, but still ready to crush the human vessel. They had numbers, endless numbers, and they knew the storm cannon could not fire again quickly. The prototype needed time to cool, maybe several minutes, maybe longer. "Captain," the tactical officer whispered, "they're preparing a full assault. All fronts." Rylan looked at the sea of ships closing in on them once more. Then we make them pay for every meter they move." He stood tall, calm despite the danger. His ship was damaged, his crew exhausted, and the enemy outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. But humans were strange creatures. They fought hardest when they were close to defeat. And Ryland planned to show the universe exactly how dangerous one stubborn human warship could be. "Prepare for part 2, he murmured under his breath, voice firm. "This battle is far from over." Smoke drifted through the bridge of the Valor as the crew tried to regain control of their stations. The storm cannon's blast had shaken the entire ship, leaving panels cracked and sparks flickering like tiny dying stars. Captain Ryland Hale wiped soot from his brow and stood steady on the command deck, refusing to show fear. Outside the viewport, the alien fleet moved like a living shadow, adjusting their formation after the destruction of their vanguard. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, a single human warship had broken their front line into dust. Now they wanted revenge. The alien ships began to spread out, surrounding the Valor in a wide circle. Their movements were careful this time, like predators studying a dangerous prey. They had learned that the human ship was unpredictable, that it could hurt them, that it could kill them. But they still believed numbers would win in the end. "Captain, the storm cannon is offline," the weapons officer reported with a strained voice. "Reactor temperature is too high. If we try firing again now, the whole ship—" "I know," Ryland said. "We won't fire it again yet." He kept his eyes on the enemy. Their ships glowed with charging energy. They were preparing something big, too big. 1,000 ships could combine firepower into a single devastating strike. If they did, the Valor might not survive even one hit. Ryland tapped the railing, thinking fast. Their shields were weak, their armor cracked, and their main weapon exhausted. But humans never won battles by being polite. They survived by being clever, engineering. Ryland said into his calm, "I want emergency power rerouted to maneuvering thrusters. Give me everything you can." "Captain, that could shut down life support," the engineer warned. "Only for a few minutes." "Do it." The crew obeyed without argument. They trusted him. They had seen him survive impossible situations before. Even now, they believed he could outthink an armada. A low rumble filled the ship as power shifted. Lights dimmed. Airflow slowed. The hum of the ship's systems grew weak and uncertain. But the thrusters glowed brighter, ready for sudden and wild movement. The aliens fired. A massive swarm of plasma shots streaked through space like burning comets. Ryland shouted, "Evasive pattern Delta," and the pilot slammed the control stick forward. The Valor lurched violently, spinning between the glowing streams of energy. Plasma bursts flew past the hull, close enough to melt the outer armor. Crew members gripped their stations to stay upright. The ship twisted, dipped, and rolled in impossible ways, moving like a creature desperate to survive. The alien fleet fired again and again. But each time, the Valor slipped through the chaos by a hair's width. The pilot shouted, "We can't dodge forever. We just need to buy time." Ryland answered, "Keep moving." The alien formation tightened, trying to box the human ship in. Ryland realized they were attempting to trap the Valor in a net of plasma fire. If they succeeded, the human ship would have nowhere left to run. Ryland studied the starfield for a split second and found something: a narrow passage between two enemy lines where their formation was weakest. Not weak enough to escape entirely, but just weak enough to cause havoc. "Pilot, take us through that gap," he ordered, pointing. "That gap is filled with enemy frigates." The pilot said, his voice cracking, "Exactly, move." The pilot obeyed. The Valor surged forward. Enemy ships rushed to block them, but were too slow. The Valor slipped between the lines and passed dangerously close to an alien frigate, so close that Ryland could see the strange insect-like pilots inside. Through their glowing cockpit screens, the aliens panicked. They were used to massive battles, not knife-range dogfights with a stubborn human ship. Their formation grew messy as ships scrambled to avoid collision. Some fired too early, some fired too late, some hit their own allies. Explosions bloomed across the alien ranks as friendly fire tore through their side. Ryland seized the advantage. "Target those overloaded ships," he ordered. "Fire all secondary weapons." The Valor's pulse cannons lit up, releasing streaks of bright red energy. The shots tore through already damaged alien vessels, causing chain explosions. In seconds, a dozen enemy ships fell apart, drifting into burning debris. The crew cheered, but Rylan did not. He knew the enemy still held overwhelming numbers. A little chaos would not save them for long. They needed something bigger. How long until the storm cannon is usable again? He asked. 10 minutes if we're lucky, the weapons officer replied. 10 minutes was an eternity in a battle like this. 10 minutes was an eternity in a battle like this. Suddenly, the Valor shook violently. A plasma blast struck the rear of the ship, ripping through an engine. Fire erupted inside the corridor. Crew members scrambled to seal the breach. Damage to Engine 3. The engineer shouted, "We're losing thrust." Another strike hit the left wing of the ship. Rylan grabbed the railing as sparks flew. The aliens had adjusted. They were firing in waves now, forcing the Valor into predictable dodges. Their trap was closing. Rylan stared at the storm cannon's status screen. 10 minutes. They did not have 10 minutes. They were barely surviving 10 seconds at a time. He took a slow breath. "Engineering," he said quietly. "Is there any way to cool the reactor faster?" A pause. Then, "There is one way, Captain. But it's dangerous. Everything today is dangerous," Rylan said. "Tell me." After a short explanation, Rylan made his decision. It was reckless. It was risky. It could destroy their ship or save them. "Prepare for emergency coolant purge," he ordered. The crew stared at him in shock. He was about to turn the ship into a bomb of freezing vapor and hope it would work. The battle was about to get even more chaotic. The command deck of the Valor fell silent as Captain Rylan Hale gave the order. Everyone understood what an emergency coolant purge meant. It would flood the inner decks with freezing vapor and dump the reactor's heat into space. In one violent burst, the sudden change in temperature could crack the hull. It could shut down systems. It could even kill crew members trapped in the wrong place. But if they did nothing, the alien fleet would destroy them anyway. Rylan stood tall, voice steady as the ship trembled around him. "Initiate purge sequence," he said. No turning back. Deep in the ship's core, heavy valves unlocked. A deep, shaking thud echoed through the hull as coolant tanks released their contents. Super-cold vapor blasted into hot reactor chambers with a roar that felt like the ship was screaming. Frost raced across metal walls. The lights flickered and died for a moment, plunging the interior into a frozen fog of darkness. Then emergency power kicked in, lighting the corridors with a pale blue glow. Rylan gripped the railing as a wave of cold air hit the bridge. The ship shook violently, more than any plasma blast had managed. Several crew members stumbled, struggling to stay upright. One of the bridge screens cracked from the sudden temperature drop, but the reactor temperature gauge fell fast, too fast. The ship creaked under the stress. "Hold together," Rylan whispered. Outside, the alien fleet repositioned itself. They didn't know what the human ship was doing, but they saw it slowing down. They thought the Valor was damaged, maybe dying. They moved in for the kill, tightening formation from all sides. Plasma cannons brightened across 1,000 hulls. "Captain," the engineer said, "the purge is complete. Reactor temperature is stable. The storm cannon is ready." Relief washed over the bridge, but it lasted only a second, because another alert blared. The coolant purge had frozen part of the drive core. The ship could fire the storm cannon, yes, but now they could barely move. Rylan understood immediately. If they fired now, they would expose themselves to every alien gun in the system. They would destroy some enemy ships, but they would be destroyed right after, unless he found a way to use their immobility to their advantage. "Pilot," Rylan said, "angle the ship's bow toward the densest cluster of alien ships. We can't fully turn." "Sir," the pilot replied, hands shaking over the controls. "The starboard thrusters are frozen. Then turn as much as you can. Even a few degrees will matter." The ship groaned as it tried to pivot. It moved slowly, painfully, but it moved. The alien ships came closer, forming a massive sphere around the Valor. They intended to fire all at once, erase the human warship in a single ocean of plasma, enemy weapons charging. The tactical officer said in a whisper. Rylan's voice was calm. "Charge storm cannon." Inside the ship, the experimental weapon drew power from the newly cooled reactor. The lights dimmed again. The air hummed with rising energy. The cannon's coils glowed a dangerous blue, brighter and brighter, until the metal shook. The alien fleet noticed the energy spike. They accelerated their attack plan. Plasma cannons lit up across the sphere. Hundreds, thousands, all aiming at the one human ship in the center. The pilot muttered, "Captain, if they fire first." "They won't." Rylan didn't blink. He watched the enemy lines on the main display. Watched their shifting patterns. Watched the growing glow of their weapons. He waited. Storm. Cannon at 70%. The weapons officer said, "Enemy weapons at 80, 85%. She said, "Enemy weapons at 90, 95%. The alien fleet released their shot. Fire. Rylan roared. The storm cannon unleashed its beam at the exact instant the enemy fired. Blue lightning burst forward, twisting and spinning with violent force. It slammed straight into the heart of the alien formation. At the same moment, a wave of burning plasma rushed toward the Valor like the breath of a dying star. The storm cannon's blast hit first. It tore through the alien battle sphere, ripping a hole straight through their center. Dozens of ships exploded. Some were vaporized. Others slammed into their allies as wreckage spun outward. The blast wave forced the rest of the fleet to break formation, and that break saved the Valor. The alien firing lines were disrupted mid-shot. Instead of one unified attack, their plasma barrage scattered wildly. Most of the shots missed. Some flew past at deadly speed. A few did hit, but they were isolated strikes, not the full combined power. The Valor shook violently. Panels broke. A fire erupted near the engineering bulkhead. But the ship lived. The cannon's recoil, however, sent the Valor spinning. The ship rotated helplessly, its frozen thrusters unable to correct. Crew members fell to the floor. Loose equipment bounced off the walls. The pilot shouted, "We're out of control. Stabilize us." Rylan ordered, "I can't. Thrusters are frozen solid." The ship spun faster, stars becoming streaks across the viewport. The alien fleet regrouped at the edges of the explosion zone. They were angry. They were afraid. But they were not beaten. Rylan steadied himself and stared at the tactical map. The storm cannon had bought them time, maybe a minute, maybe two. But the aliens were closing in again. And now the Valor couldn't move. Engineering. Rylan said carefully, "Tell me there is something, anything we can use to regain control." There was a long, heavy pause. Then the engineer answered quietly, "There is one option, Captain, but you won't like it." Rylan exhaled. "Tell me." "We can bypass the frozen thrusters by venting fuel directly into open space. The explosion will kick us in the opposite direction." "Like a rocket?" Rylan asked. "Yes, but it's unpredictable. If we vent too much or too close to the hull." Rylan finished the sentence for him. "We blow ourselves up." Silence filled the bridge. The alien fleet was turning toward them again, and Rylan had to choose. Captain Rylan Hale stared at the engineering display as the ship spun helplessly through space. The frozen thrusters blinked red, unresponsive and lifeless. The alien fleet was already reforming its attack sphere, closing in from all sides with renewed anger. They had lost hundreds of ships, and that made them even more determined to crush the lone human vessel. Rylan knew they would not hesitate this time. They would finish the Valor, break it apart, and use its pieces as a warning to the rest of humanity. He refused to let that happen. "Engineering," he said, voice steady. "Prepare the fuel venting sequence." The engineer hesitated. "Captain, we could ignite the entire lower deck. Anyone's still repairing damage down there." Rylan cut him off. "Tell them to evacuate. Now." The order spread through the ship instantly. Crew members on the damaged decks dropped what they were doing and ran through smoky corridors, alarms blaring above them. The Valor tilted and spun so violently that some fell and slid across the floor. But they got up again. Nobody wanted to die in a fuel explosion. On the bridge, Rylan gripped the railing as the viewport blurred with spinning starlight. "Pilot," he said, "as soon as the fuel vents, be ready for the kick." "I can't aim properly while we're spinning," the pilot said, hands shaking on the controls. "You won't need to aim. You just need to react." The pilot swallowed hard. "Understood, Captain." The alien ships edged closer. Their glowing weapons pointed inward like a cage made of fire. They were preparing a coordinated strike. the kind that would leave nothing behind but drifting metal. The tactical officer whispered, "Captain, they're charging all plasma cannons." Rylan nodded slowly. "Then we move before they do." In the lower deck, the engineer confirmed, "Evacuation complete. Fuel venting ready." Rylan exhaled. "Do it." A deep metallic clank echoed through the ship, followed by a loud roar as the fuel tanks released their contents into open space. The sudden burst of gas burned instantly as it hit the vacuum, creating a bright explosion just outside the Valor's hull. The force slammed into the ship like a giant hammer. The entire vessel lurched violently, the spin slowing, then stopping in a jarring motion that threw several crew members to the floor. The pilot regained control with trembling hands, fighting the shaking controls. Stabilizing. Got it. The Valor stopped spinning. It drifted, wounded but upright once more, its bow aimed loosely toward the enemy lines. Rylan felt a flicker of hope, short-lived, because the aliens reacted immediately. Seeing the human ship regain control, they moved in fast. "Captain!" the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple bomber wings approaching." Rylan's eyes narrowed. "They want to finish us with close-range strikes." It made sense. Their long-range barrage had failed twice. Now they planned to swarm the Valor with smaller, more agile craft, hundreds of them. If they attached explosive pods to the hull, the human warship would be shredded from the outside. "Prepare point defense guns," Rylan ordered. "They're overheating." "Captain, we used them non-stop during the last attack. Cool them as best you can and fire anyway." The alien bombers screamed in from all directions, small but fast, glowing with deadly energy. Rylan watched them approach like a cloud of angry insects. The point defense guns on the Valor lit up, firing bursts of red tracer fire across the void. Dozens of bombers exploded before they got close, but hundreds more slipped through, zigzagging around the Valor's weak shield bubble. Explosions rocked the hull as a few bombers released their payloads early. Metal twisted. Panels burst. A large portion of the ship's left wing shattered outward, drifting off into space as burning debris, damage to port side. An officer shouted, "Hull breach detected." Rylan kept his focus. "Seal the breach. Keep firing." But he knew they couldn't hold this off forever. The storm cannon was cooling again after its last devastating shot. They needed time. They needed breathing room. Anything to delay the alien swarm. An idea sparked in Rylan's mind, wild, dangerous, but possible. "Pilot," he said, "take us toward that debris field. The remains of the enemy vanguard." The pilot blinked in surprise. "Captain, that area is full of wreckage." "Exactly. Use it as cover." The Valor surged forward, engines straining. The alien bombers chased close behind, but the human warship slipped between drifting fragments of enemy ships. Shattered hull pieces, twisted metal arms, glowing reactors, all floating in a cloud of death. The bombers followed, but now they struggled. They had to weave through the wreckage, and their tight formation broke apart. Some crashed into floating debris. Some were forced into slower, clumsy movements. The Valor's point defense guns fired again, picking off the scattered survivors with better accuracy. Rylan gripped the railing. "Weapons officer, how long until the storm cannon charges again?" "For minutes," she said. "For minutes. That might as well be a lifetime in this battle." The alien fleet began shifting again. Bigger ships now moved toward the debris field, weapons glowing with deadly light. They planned to wipe the Valor out along with every piece of wreckage around it. Rylan scanned the tactical map. His heartbeat slowed. His mind sharpened. A plan formed, dangerous, insane, but maybe their only chance. He turned toward the crew. "Everyone, listen carefully. We are about to do something extremely stupid, and it might save humanity." The crew leaned in. Rylan continued, "We're going to use the debris as a weapon." The crew stared at Captain Rylan Hale as his words echoed through the damaged bridge. Use the debris as a weapon. It sounded impossible, reckless, maybe even suicidal. But everything they had done so far bordered on impossible, and they were still alive. Rylan pointed at the tactical display, where drifting remains of the alien vanguard filled a wide area of space. Twisted engines, shattered hull plates, cracked reactors glowing with dying energy, all floating like a deadly metal cloud. Behind it, the alien fleet pushed forward again. The larger ships were preparing another heavy strike, charging plasma cannons that glowed brighter by the second. They wanted to blast the entire debris field apart and vaporize the Valor at the same time. Ryland spoke calmly, as if discussing simple weather. "Pilot, guide us deeper into the debris. Close to the center." The pilot hesitated. "Captain, the navigation systems can't track everything in there. If we hit a large piece, we won't hit anything. We'll make the aliens hit it for us." The Valor drifted deeper, sliding between dead metal shapes. Sparks drifted from open wires in the wreckage. A massive alien ship hull passed by so close that the Valor's hull sensors triggered proximity alarms. The crew held their breath as they moved through the graveyard of destroyed ships, weaving through wreckage that could crush them in an instant. The alien bombers tried to follow, but the wreckage forced them apart. Some scraped metal, some lost engines. One collided with a large piece of broken armor and exploded in a bright flash. The others backed off, regrouping outside the debris cloud. They were hesitant now, unsure how to attack without killing themselves. The larger alien warships approached slowly, confident and patient. Their commanders saw the human ship hiding, and they prepared to blast the entire area. On the tactical screen, glowing red arcs began forming. The aliens were locking and firing coordinates, planning to sweep the whole section of space with plasma. Ryland watched the lines build. He saw the angles, the timing, the energy signatures, and then he saw the opportunity. "Pilot," he said, "bring us near that long, curved hull piece on the right." The pilot looked at it. It was a giant broken section of alien armor, still spinning slowly, almost as large as the Valor itself. "Captain, that thing is huge. If we get too close, we need it to block the first volley. Move." The pilot obeyed. The Valor glided behind the large wrecked hull just as the alien fleet opened fire. A massive wave of plasma streaked across space. Bright, glowing trails lit the darkness like fiery rivers. They hit the wreckage shield head-on, exploding across the twisted metal. The blast threw wreckage everywhere. The giant hull piece shattered into hundreds of smaller fragments. Those fragments shot outward at terrifying speed straight back toward the alien ships. Ryland watched it unfold like he had planned it all along. That's it. The alien ships had not expected their own wreckage to be turned into high-speed shrapnel. Dozens of sharp, heavy pieces slammed into their formation. Some hit shields, others struck hulls directly. Several alien ships spun from the impacts, firing their cannons in panic and hitting their own allies by mistake. Plasma bursts flashed across their fleet. The crew of the Valor stared in shock. It was working. Real chaos spread through the alien ranks again. But Ryland wasn't finished. "Pilot, bring us closer to the broken reactor cluster on the left." The pilot turned sharply. The ship moved behind a shattered set of reactor cores from the earlier storm cannon blast. The alien fleet tried to adjust their aim and fire again, but their formation was a mess now. Lines were broken. Timing was off. Their aim was sloppy. Plasma shots flew wildly. Some hit the reactor debris instead of the Valor, and the moment the plasma touched the half-destroyed reactor cores, they exploded in a chain reaction, so bright the entire debris field lit up like a giant flare. Shockwaves ripped outward, crashing into enemy ships. Multiple alien cruisers lost shields in an instant. The crew on the bridge covered their eyes as the light flooded the viewport. Enemy formation collapsing. The tactical officer shouted, "Several ships are falling back." Ryland nodded, but he didn't smile. He could see the rest of the alien fleet pushing forward with renewed rage. They still had hundreds of ships, maybe more, and the Valor had no more tricks left. They had used the debris as a weapon, but that only bought them a little more time. "Storm cannon status," Ryland demanded. "Charging." "Almost there," the weapons officer said. "But the power levels are unstable. We pushed the reactor too hard." "How long?" 2 minutes. 2 minutes in this battlefield was a lifetime. The alien fleet began to tighten again. Bombers returned from the edges of the debris field, regrouping for another attack. Ryland knew what would happen next. They would rush the Valor, attach explosive pods to the hull, and tear the ship apart piece by piece. "Captain," the pilot whispered, "they're coming back." Ryland stared at the screen. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. His mind raced. He had one last move, and it would require everything the crew had left. Everyone. Listen carefully, he said, stepping forward. In 2 minutes, the storm cannon fires a shot powerful enough to end this battle. But we must survive 2 minutes. So we are going to hold this position no matter what comes. The ship shuddered as the enemy bombers closed in. Rylan raised his voice. This is the line. This is where humanity stands. The battle was about to reach its breaking point. The Valor drifted inside the glowing debris field, battered, cracked, and burning in several places. Its crew moved with fierce determination, extinguishing fires, sealing leaks, and dragging damaged equipment back into place. Every breath felt heavy, every alarm felt louder than the last. The walls groaned like an old beast near its limit, but the storm cannon was charging, slowly gathering power for one final strike. Captain Rylan Hale stood at the center of the bridge, watching enemy markers close in from every direction. The alien bombers moved again, forming a deadly swarm. Behind them, massive alien warships adjusted their aim for a decisive finishing blow. The enemy had suffered heavy losses, but they still had overwhelming numbers. This time, they wanted no mistakes. This time, they would not hold back. Storm cannon at 30%, the weapons officer reported. Energy rising steady, but slow. We only need one shot, Rylan said quietly. The pilot swallowed hard. Captain, they're not just coming. They're rushing us. Full speed. It's coming. They're rushing us. Full speed. Outside the viewport, dozens of alien bombers screamed through the wreckage. Their engines glowed like comet tails, pushing them faster than before. They did not care about crashing into debris now. They simply wanted to reach the human ship and destroy it by any means. Rylan pointed forward. Point defense guns. Fire at anything that comes near. The gunners obeyed. Cannons lit up, spraying red tracer fire across the dark void. Several bombers exploded instantly, torn apart by the first barrage. But the swarm kept coming, weaving in tight, impossible patterns. Some flew low, some high, some twisted around debris. They were determined, relentless, almost fearless. They had been ordered to end the human problem, even if they died doing it. Storm cannon at 50%, the weapons officer said. The Valor shook as two bombers crashed into the outer hull, detonating their explosive pods on impact. Metal plates tore away, scattering into space. Another bomber clipped a wing, ripping a deep gash across the side of the ship. Hull breach on deck 7. An officer shouted, "Seal it." Rylan ordered, keeping his focus on the display. More shots blasted from the Valor's guns, hitting bombers one after another. But too many still approached. Rylan felt the seconds slipping away. They needed to hold to minutes. They had survived maybe 40 seconds, and the enemy was not stopping. A new alarm blared. "Captain, a cruiser is charging a heavy plasma beam. If it hits us, it won't hit," Rylan said sharply. "Not if we deny it the shot." He glanced at the pilot. "Turn us 30 degrees. Block their line of sight with the reactor debris." The pilot didn't hesitate. The Valor drifted to the side, sliding behind a floating cluster of shattered reactor cores. A moment later, a massive plasma beam sliced through the space they had just occupied, hitting the debris instead. A blinding explosion shook the field, throwing fragments everywhere. The shockwave hit the Valor, rattling every bolt and shaking the deck. Several crew members fell to the floor. The tactical map flickered with distortion. Storm cannon at 65%. The weapons officer said, her voice trembling. Rylan steadied himself. "Hold on. Keep firing." Bombers closed in from below. The point defense guns rotated sharply, spitting fire downward. 3 bombers disappeared in bright flashes, but to made it through, they slammed against the underside of the Valor, setting off violent blasts that ripped open the lower deck. "Captain, we lost pressure into compartments. Seal them and keep fighting," Rylan ordered. He saw the shapes of bigger alien ships pushing into the debris field now. They moved slowly, but their weapons glowed with terrifying power. If even one of those heavy shots hit the Valor, everything would be over. The pilot shouted, "They're trying to box us in." "Then we break the box," Rylan said. "Bring us up 10 meters. Right thrusters full. The thrusters groaned, burning hotter than they should, pushing the ship upward through the wreckage. Alien bombers smashed into debris trying to chase them. The Valor spun slightly but stabilized, storm cannon at 80%. Rylan tightened his jaw. Almost there, the swarm changed tactics. Instead of diving straight in, bombers began circling the Valor in a ring, closing that circle tighter and tighter like a noose. Each carried an explosive pod capable of tearing open whole decks. "They're surrounding us," the tactical officer warned. "We can't shoot them all." The point defense guns fired non-stop, glowing red-hot from the overload. Sweat dripped down the gunners' faces. They were hitting targets, but not fast enough. The circle tightened, storm cannon at 90%. The weapons officer said. Rylan watched the alien circle closing. He could almost feel their intention. They planned to detonate all at once, overwhelming the Valor with explosive force. He said in a low, steady voice, "Pilot, vent the last reserve fuel. All of it." The pilot's eyes widened. "Captain, let's do it." Another violent blast erupted behind the Valor as the remaining fuel ignited in space. The force kicked the ship forward, just enough to break the tightening bomber circle. The alien swarm scattered in surprise, thrown off by the sudden movement. Storm cannon at 100%. The weapons officer yelled. Rylan raised his voice over the alarms. "Target the center of their command formation." The crew locked the coordinates. Rylan stared at the screen, then gave the order, "Fire." The storm cannon roared to life, bright enough to blind the stars. The storm cannon fired with a soundless flash that brightened the entire debris field. Space itself seemed to glow as the beam ripped forward, twisting and crackling with blue-white lightning. The crew of the Valor shielded their eyes while the ship trembled under the force of its own weapon. Captain Rylan Hale stood firm, staring into the blinding light. He knew this shot had to count. It was the last of their energy, the last of their strength, and maybe the last of humanity's hope. The storm cannon's beam tore through the darkness like a spear of angry light. It pierced the center of the alien fleet's command formation where the biggest, most heavily armored ships waited, believing distance kept them safe. They were wrong. The first alien flagship took the full impact. Its shields collapsed instantly, shattering like invisible glass. The beam stabbed through its hull, punching a hole straight through its core. The entire ship exploded in a blinding burst that shook nearby vessels. The beam continued, slicing through a second command ship, then a third. Massive alien battleships split apart, spilling fire and debris into the void. The recoil shuddered through the Valor again, but the ship held. The crew watched in stunned silence as the bright lance of energy carved its path through the fleet. Rylan didn't blink. He watched the destruction closely. He needed to see how the enemy reacted. As the light faded and the storm cannon died down, the battlefield revealed itself. Alien ships drifted in broken pieces. Fire burned across several massive wrecks. The command formation, once the most organized part of the fleet, was now a graveyard. But the battle was not over, not yet. Hundreds of alien ships remained. Smaller, faster, and furious, smoke drifted through the bridge. The storm cannon's coils glowed dangerously, warning of overheating. The weapons officer whispered, "Cannon is completely offline, Captain. It won't fire again, ever." Rylan nodded slowly. He had expected that. "Then we fight with what we have left." The alien fleet hesitated for a brief moment. Their command ships were gone, their leadership broken. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Some ships turned away. Others powered down weapons, unsure of new orders. But many still aimed at the human warship. Revenge burned in them. They wanted the Valor destroyed for the chaos it caused. One large alien cruiser broke from the remaining formation and charged forward, weapons glowing. It moved fast, trying to ram the Valor with its massive hull. The crew braced for impact. Rylan shouted, "Pilot, hard to starboard." The pilot pulled the controls sharply. The Valor's remaining thrusters fired weakly, pushing the ship just enough to avoid a direct collision. The alien cruiser scraped past them, metal tearing metal, sparks flying in a long trail. The impact rocked the bridge so hard several crew members fell. But the cruiser overshot and crashed into a chunk of debris behind them. Exploding in a burst of green fire, another wave of smaller alien ships rushed forward. They fired plasma shots, lighting up the Valor's weakened shields. Rylan shouted orders as the crew responded with rapid, practiced movements. Point defense guns fired again, hitting several attackers. One alien bomber exploded so close that pieces of its hull flew across the viewport. "We can't hold much longer," the tactical officer cried. Rylan knew she was right. The Valor had little fuel, no shields, and no main weapon. Its hull was cracked. Its engines were limping. Its crew was exhausted. But something strange happened. The aliens, those still alive, after witnessing the destruction of their command, began to fall back. Their formation loosened. Their firing slowed. "They're retreating," the pilot whispered. Rylan watched carefully. It was true. The alien fleet, shaken and leaderless, was turning away. Some kept their weapons pointed toward the Valor, but none advanced. Others drifted backward, then activated their jump drives, disappearing into streaks of light. The survivors had chosen not to die here. They had chosen to flee. A single human warship had broken 1,000 ships. A single human crew had stood against impossible odds and won. The bridge fell silent as the last alien signature faded from the tactical map. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the crew erupted into cheers, shouts, and relieved laughter. Some dropped into their chairs. Others hugged whoever was closest. Tears mixed with smoke and sweat. Rylan finally allowed himself to breathe deeply. He looked at each of his crew members, the people who had fought beside him through chaos, fire, and death. People who refused to give up, even when hope seemed gone. The engineer's tired voice came through the comm. "Captain, we're alive." Rylan smiled faintly. "Yes, and so is humanity." The Valor drifted through the quiet remains of the battlefield. Fires burned in the distance. Wreckage glowed in fading colors. The stars shimmered around them, calm again after so much violence. The pilot turned to Rylan. "Captain, what now?" Rylan looked at the map. Beyond the debris field lay open space, silent and empty. "Now," he said softly, "we go home." "Now," he said softly, "we go home."